Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I'm mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too, as we continue to study Jordan Peterson's work and live, laugh, love, learn, and linger, and live the life we love. We're all functioning and see ourselves through the lens of a certain narrative. It's the story that tells us how we should act in the world, how we should organize ourselves, connect to other people, and to a certain extent, at least in small groups, avoid undue conflict, although we haven't learned how to do that on a mass scale yet. But we live a shared story. Each person has their individual story, and then we merge our stories with other people's stories. And because, in certain ways, our hypothalamus and its territoriality, we have not yet outlived the proclivity to defend our territory. It's deeply embedded in our psyche, and it's been there for a really long time. But yet, if we can study our instincts, we will find out certain things that we end up knowing intuitively before we become conscious of it. So the first thing I want to say is all the old stories, whether the biblical stories or the mythological stories or the fairy tales, you can't just dismiss them casually. To take them seriously and realize they're much more complicated and sophisticated than we originally thought. It's actually the birthplace of the most sophisticated philosophical ideas. So what are they trying to represent with all these formulations? Well, for me, of course, it's trying to articulate the abstract ideal of spirit or God, which, of course, is the same as consciousness in the yogic system, consciousness being associated with that which gives rise to being itself. So in the Western formula, they say, God is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. The only thing it lacks is limitation. And it's by studying the humanities that the shared dream, cross-culturally, starts to develop itself. And the more we can articulate our ideas, the logos, the word, the divine element in every single human being, it uses language to call forth being into existence. So, what can we do to help that along? Well, first of all, work on yourself, because if you're not aiming upwards, there's nothing you can do about it. And if another person isn't aiming upwards, very, very little we can do to convince them. So how do we speed up the transformation? Well, we articulate this idea in a better and better way because there's an active engagement, neurophysiologically, neuroanatomically, that has a sense of felt rightness when we're doing what we think is the best of all possible ways of being. Now, each individual has their own idiosyncrasies, so don't write people off. Despite their idiosyncrasies, there still might be something of fantastic worth that we can find out if we're open ourselves to other people. Now, one of the things that's really important is to align yourself to be what Carl Rogers calls genuine. And that's when your physical, physiological, psychological, biological systems are all aligned with each other, as opposed to being like a mess of inner contradictions. And then it's hard to put yourself out in the world when you're so divided that way, because then you're not really being yourself. So the first thing I would say is be truthful. Insofar as you understand what that is, don't be deceitful. It doesn't work. Try it. You probably have understood that already, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this lecture. So even if you can't live a life that's completely wise, don't live a life that's unwise. Tell the truth as best as you can. And I understand that we're all experiencing a historical moment where the advanced technology that is all over the world has impaired us in a certain way, and we fail because the old teachings of mythology and religion have been debunked by science, and it's really hard to justify that worldview in the light of empiricism. But nonetheless, our job is to orient ourselves towards the highest good that we're capable of imagining and let an organic unfolding help this metaphysical ethic. And when it all boils down to how you use your language to express yourself, the only thing I can say is do not say things that make you appear weaker than you really are.